You watched a movie, didn't you?
I watched a slasher flick the other day. This one's been making its buzz around the horror circle. It's called In a Violent Nature.
Yeah, I've seen it around.
Yeah. There's been a lot of ads for it. So the premise is simple. It's just kind of a general Jason Voorhees style killer that's stalking the woods and killing a bunch of teens.
Yeah.
But the premise or the execution is that it is told mostly from the point of view of the killer, and its atmosphere is less cheesy, even though some of the acting might be cheesy at some points. It is quite a quiet movie. Like, there is no soundtrack or score from my memory of this movie. I think the catalyst is these group of students, they're camping, pretty much similar to Handsome Guys and Tucker and Dale, really.
Yeah.
And then there's some kind of curse.
Classic 80s slasher situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think they took like a pendant or something that's keeping the curse at bay.
Man,
and
what's with these kids and just taking obviously cursed items?
Yeah. It's not a super long movie, probably just like an hour and 30 minutes, and it's probably like as it should be. But I think the difference is this movie is sort of touting itself as somewhat of an art house slasher movie.
Okay.
Because the cinematography is very beautiful. And a lot of it is just long tracking shots of the killer just like walking through the forest looking for his next victim. And it gets quite like mesmerizing at some points. And there are like a number of pretty fun kills. There's definitely, I would say that there's two marquee kills in this movie. One that is a lot more graphic and probably the most cartoonish out of the movie. When you watch it, you'll see.
So it's not shot in the same style as an 80s slasher film. Okay.
No, not really.
Just
it's
the
quite
premise
clean.
is okay.
Like, it's not using like film grain or anything like that.
Okay.
But like, there's definitely a message that this movie is trying to say by the end of this movie, which I kind of get what it's going for. But my issue with this movie is that I get the impression is that it thinks it's smarter than it really is. Like, I like wanky films and I like films with a lot of personality, but I think this one probably just tips it over to the edge a little bit, where it's like, I feel like the director trying to say something deep, but it's like, yeah, it's kind of hidden with all this like really nicely shot, imagery. But at the end of the day, it's a slasher film, right? And
you'd rather they just had some fun with it.
I mean, they definitely are having some fun, and I think it kind of like switches the tone of it, because some of the kills, especially the marquee kill, it's really like graphic, but it's also quite cartoony. So it like kind of shifts tones a little bit like too much. And the ending definitely does subvert your like expectation, I think, as well. But it's also like, yeah, I mean, cool. But, I feel like it would have been more enjoyable if it probably had a little bit more fun.
Okay.
But I think it's a good movie. You can definitely like see because there's a lot of kills, but like the budget kind of starts to show because there's a lot of like walking in this movie.
And I think that's kind of in line with the Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Mike Myers.
And I think this film is fairly divisive amongst horror fans.
Okay.
Because a lot of people say it's pretty boring. I wouldn't say it's boring, but it does get a little bit slow. There's one of the kills involves like a really long, drawn out thing, which I won't spoil here, which I actually kind of felt was fun to watch as well. Like, probably that's like the second marquee kill. But then a lot of the other ones, it's like, it's just someone getting like axed or getting something thrown at them.
Well, I mean, horror these days is a bit of a spectrum. It's a pretty broad genre.
Yeah.
Would you say that this film is more towards the elevated horror end of things, or would you say?
Yeah, I think it's trying to be elevated. I would say it's leaning more towards the elevated horror, just with its, I guess it feels like an art house movie.
Okay.
Even if the subject matter and the genre maybe is not. It's not like an Ari Aster movie where it does feel like it's saying a little bit more. Or like a Robert Eggers kind of horror. it's very simple in its premise.
So what you're saying is it's kind of mid and doesn't please anyone.
Yeah. I guess so. Like I would say it's better than average because the premise, the premise is quite simple, but I think its execution is quite different, which I enjoyed that they attempted to do something different. But probably it needs to spend a little bit more time in the oven on the script because the script itself and the actions that the characters take, it's too tropey for it to be like as art house as it's trying to be. Because there's like some characters just do dumb things where it's just like, yeah, that's an 80s movie trope.
Yeah.
Which if it would make more sense in like a Voorhees or, you know, a slasher where it's kind of an elevated sense. But this one, it seems like it's going for more realism.
Right.
But then it's like, yeah, I don't know if these tropes really mingle that well.
A little bit
but yeah, it's
inconsistent.
kind of it's definitely experimental, which I appreciate. I would definitely recommend it and see what you think. Maybe other people might resonate with it a little bit more than I did.
Yeah, it's got a pretty good selling point. Like
definitely
a slasher from the point of view of the killer.
I think there could be a franchise. So I think this movie was pretty successful. Because it's definitely low budget. Like, I think that's the beauty of horror, and it's why investors really like making horror movies is because they're low budget and they earn a lot of money. Like
horror films and animated films. You don't have to pay anyone shit. You make it on the cheap.
Just crunch them, just crunch just make a million DC Justice League movies. People will watch them.
Love it.
Yeah. Like there's not really that much more to say about it really, because it's like it's a pretty simple, fun premise. Go watch it because there's some pretty fun kills in this movie. I would say
like the X series is kind of like an elevated take on the slasher genre.
Yeah, I would say so, especially with Pearl. Yeah, those are kind of more elevated, but I think there's a sense more of like pacing and progression, and
more
I think
intent, I guess.
Yeah. Its message and its characters are a lot deeper than probably the characters in A Violent Nature, but it's still like having a bit of fun as well. So yeah, I actually really enjoy the. I guess it's the X trilogy. Yeah. Probably one of the better horror franchises that I've come across in the past few years.
Yeah.
But yeah, In a Violent Nature, it could be a franchise because it's like, as with most slashers, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but it's like, it's pretty open-ended by the ending because like, yeah, sequels, you know. And what's a slasher franchise or slasher movie without like 5 unnecessary sequels, you know? It's kind of like part of the course of making a slasher. I mean, Ty West wants to make more like Maxine movies now, depending on how well Maxine
of course
does.
He did.
So,
you know what? I recently saw like interview of Ty West and Mia Goth. And for some reason, I always imagine Ty West being black. It's just like this white, like film student looking dude, and like he definitely knows what he's talking about. Like it was enjoyable listening to him talk about film, but I don't know why. I just thought he was black. I think it's because his name is Ty, and I associate that with T.I.
I can sort of see where you made that mistake. I knew he was white, but it is a pretty cool name though.
It's like cool name.
So it's
all right. Well, that sounds like a fairly fun, fairly artsy movie. But shall we move it along?